Captain Eli Rivers never thought he'd end up standing in front of an alien throne, let alone an alien empress. Yet here he was, dusty, bruised and grinning like an idiot, while an entire galaxy watched him on 1,000 hollow screens. The throne room of the Vaeloran Empire was something out of a dream, or maybe a fever. The walls shimmered like glass filled with starlight, the floor rippled underfoot like liquid crystal, and the air smelled faintly of something sweet and electric. Thousands of alien nobles hovered in the balconies, their jeweled robes glowing faintly, whispering in voices that sounded like wind chimes and thunder at once. And at the center of it all sat Empress Zyra of the 12 Galaxies, tall, radiant, terrifyingly beautiful. Her skin gleamed like silver fire, and her eyes, golden and sharp, seemed to see through him. Her crown wasn't metal but pure energy, swirling gently around her head. She looked every bit a goddess, and Eli, a scruffy human captain from Earth, couldn't have looked more out of place. He shifted on his feet, his uniform torn and singed from battle. The guards behind him, towering insectoid creatures with halberds that hummed, didn't move an inch. Eli just smiled up at the Empress and said softly, "Nice place. Very shiny. Bet it's a pain to dust." The court gasped. No one joked with the Empress, not ever. Zyra tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her golden eyes. "You are bold, human, or perhaps foolish." "Usually both," Eli replied with a crooked grin, "but you can't say it's boring." She rose from her throne, tall and graceful, the very air trembling with her power. "You saved my world from the Scourge fleet. You fought when even my generals fled. The council demands I reward you." Eli scratched the back of his neck. "Hey, I just did what anyone would do. I couldn't stand by and let a planet burn." Zyra studied him like one might a strange, fragile creature. "No one does what you did for no reason. Humans, you are curious things." She lifted a hand, and a circle of light appeared around him. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that shook the chamber. "You may ask for anything within my power to grant. Wealth, title, land, ships, stars, even a companion. You may choose any woman in my empire." The court murmured in awe. This was no small offer. Zarathian custom said no mortal could refuse the Empress's reward, yet no mortal had ever been bold enough to ask for something impossible. Eli looked around, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. The nobles stared at him with disdain. Some whispered that he'd ask for power, others feared he'd ask for the Empress's warships. Instead, he met Zyra's eyes and said simply, "I want her." The chamber fell into dead silence. Zyra blinked. "You what?" Eli pointed right at her. Yes, at her, and smiled, that reckless, charming smile that had gotten him out of and into more trouble than he could count. "You said any woman, right? I pick you." The Empress didn't speak for several long seconds. Her eyes narrowed, and a soft golden light flickered around her shoulders, the kind that usually meant someone was about to be turned into stardust. The nobles gasped, hissed, or muttered in horror. One of them, a snake-like ambassador, shouted, "He insults the Empress." But Eli didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just kept that easy grin. Zyra descended the steps of her throne, her long robes gliding like smoke. She stopped inches from him, towering over him, her voice low and dangerous. "Do you understand what you are saying, human?" Eli looked up, his heart pounding, but he held her gaze. "Pretty sure. You said I could choose any woman, so yeah, I choose you." "You think this is a game?" she whispered. He shrugged. "If it is, it's the most interesting one I've ever played." She studied him for what felt like forever. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever looked at her like that, not with fear, not with worship, but with genuine warmth. "You are impossible," she said finally. "Human," he corrected gently. "We specialize in that." The Empress turned away, her expression unreadable. The guards tensed, expecting the order to execute him. But instead she raised a hand, silencing the room. You amuse me, Captain Rivers. Perhaps I shall let you live long enough to regret your words." Eli chuckled softly. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week." A faint smile, barely there, touched her lips. "We shall see if you are as brave as you are foolish. You may remain in the palace, for now." As she walked back to her throne, the nobles erupted in disbelief. Eli just exhaled, scratching his neck. "Well," he muttered under his breath, "that went better than I expected." But when he looked up again, he caught her glancing back, just for a second. Her golden eyes met his, full of curiosity and something else, something warmer. Maybe it was the beginning of a friendship, maybe something more dangerous. All he knew was this. For the first time since he'd left Earth, something about this strange, glowing woman made him feel alive again. And in the heart of the galaxy, the most powerful empress in existence found herself wondering, why did her heart feel a little less steady when the foolish little human smiled at her that way? The palace of the Vaeloran Empire woke the next morning buzzing with 1,000 rumors. Every whisper carried the same shocking words: the human chose the empress. No one believed it at first. No creature in 12 galaxies had ever dared speak such a thing aloud. But the holofeeds had captured it clearly. Captain Eli Rivers, smiling like a fool, pointing at the Empress of all worlds and saying, "I want her." By breakfast, songs were already being written about it. Some called him brave, others called him mad. Most agreed he wouldn't survive the day. Eli, meanwhile, sat on a balcony overlooking the alien city, sipping something blue and fizzy from a floating glass. Below him, the capital of Zerthal stretched endlessly, filled with towers of light and floating ships. The air hummed with life, and 2 suns rose over the horizon, painting the sky pink and gold. He sighed contentedly. Not bad for a guy who nearly got vaporized yesterday. A voice behind him answered, smooth and sharp. "You're enjoying your last sunrise, human." He turned, and there she was. Empress Zyra herself, no guards, no crown, just a long robe of silver cloth that caught the wind. Her hair shimmered like liquid gold in the morning light. Eli nearly dropped his drink. "Your Majesty, you look, less explodey this morning." Her eyes narrowed, though the corner of her mouth twitched. "Do all humans greet their rulers like that?" "Only the ones trying to impress them," he said. She stared at him for a moment before walking closer. "You still believe you can charm your way out of death?" He smiled, setting the glass down. "Well, I already survived the offer. That's progress, right?" For a second, she didn't speak. The wind played softly between them, carrying the distant sound of ships and laughter from the city below. Then Zyra said quietly, "You embarrass me before my court." Eli blinked. "Embarrassed you? I thought I was just answering the question." "You claimed me in front of the High Council," she said, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what that means in our customs?" Eli stood up, suddenly unsure. "I mean, I was just being honest. You said I could pick anyone. I didn't mean to insult you." Her eyes flashed gold. "In Zorathian law, such a declaration is a proposal of bonding. You asked for something sacred, something that binds hearts, empires, and fates. Do you still think this is a joke?" Eli froze, realization hitting him. Oh, that's what that meant." He scratched his head, grimacing. "Okay, I might have skipped that page in the cultural guidebook." The Empress looked away, exhaling sharply. "Humans. You wander into galaxies you don't understand, break every rule, and then smile as if the stars will forgive you." "Hey," he said softly, "I didn't come here to break anything. I just said what I felt." Zyra turned back, her voice lower now, more controlled. "And what do you feel, Captain Rivers?" He met her gaze. "That you're more than a title and a crown, that there's a person behind all that light and power, and maybe I just wanted her to know someone sees her." For a heartbeat, the great Empress said nothing. Her golden eyes shimmered, not with fury but with something uncertain. Then, almost whispering, she said, "No one has spoken to me like that in centuries." Guess it was overdue, he said gently. Zyra turned away, pretending to admire the view. You risk your life for words that mean nothing here. Eli smiled. They mean something to me. Silence fell again, broken only by the soft hum of distant airships. Finally, she said, the council is furious. They want you exiled from the Empire. Some demand your execution. Execution seems a bit much, Eli said. Can't we just go for a stern talking to? She ignored the joke. I told them I will decide your fate myself. You should thank me for that. Oh, I do, deeply. I'll even buy you dinner to prove it. That almost made her laugh. Almost. Dinner. You think I dine with my prisoners? He grinned. Depends. Do you usually get offers this charming? For a moment she just stared at him, caught between outrage and amusement. Then, to his complete surprise, she smiled. Just a tiny, reluctant smile that lit up her whole face. You are impossible, she said again. Still human, he replied softly. Her expression softened. You risk so much for such simple feelings. Why? Eli looked out at the sky, his voice quiet. Because sometimes simple feelings are the ones worth risking for. Zyra studied him in silence. There was something about this man, his defiance, his warmth, the way he spoke as if the universe wasn't a cold, endless void but something alive and worth saving. Finally, she said, you will stay for now. I wish to understand why you are different. He smiled. Careful, Your Majesty. People say that's how trouble starts. She raised an eyebrow. Then perhaps I wish to see what kind of trouble you bring. He gave a mock bow. I'll try to make it interesting. As she walked away, her robe whispering against the balcony floor, she paused for a brief moment. Without turning, she said quietly, You should know, Captain Rivers, no one in my empire has ever made me hesitate. And then she was gone, leaving Eli alone with a fluttering heart and the growing realization that he might have just changed the course of a galaxy by saying, I want her. He leaned on the railing, grinning to himself. Well, Eli, he murmured, you've really done it this time. And somewhere deep within the palace, Empress Zyra sat on her throne, staring into the stars, and whispered to no one in particular. Why does that foolish human make the universe feel smaller and warmer? 3 days had passed since Captain Eli Rivers had told the most powerful woman in 12 galaxies that he wanted her. 3 long, confusing, and slightly terrifying days. He hadn't been thrown in prison yet. He hadn't been vaporized, also a plus. But he hadn't exactly been invited to tea either. Every alien noble in the palace watched him like a walking scandal wrapped in human skin. Servants whispered when he passed. Guards smirked. The galaxy was waiting for the foolish human to trip on his own words. And then came the summons. Eli stood in the grand arena of light, staring up at rows of hovering spectators. It looked like a stadium built by gods, miles wide, its walls alive with pulsing energy. Above, the Empress sat on a floating dais, her silver robes gleaming like moonlight. Her golden eyes were unreadable. Captain Rivers, her voice echoed through the air, you are bold. You speak as though you know me. So today you will prove your worth. Eli's stomach dropped. Oh, that can't be good. A guard, a massive creature with 4 arms and a face like molten stone, handed him a thin metallic staff. It was warm to the touch, humming softly. You wouldn't happen to have the easy version of this test?" he asked. The guard didn't answer. The Empress rose, her voice clear and regal. "You will face the trials of heart. Survive them, and perhaps I will believe your words were not foolish." Eli blinked. Trials of what now? "The trials of heart," she said simply. "A challenge of strength, courage, and truth. If your heart is false, it will destroy you. If it is true," her eyes lingered on him, softening just slightly, "you may live." He gave a shaky laugh. "Well, I always did like high-stakes dates." The Empress's lips curved in the faintest smile before she sat down again, signaling the beginning. The ground shifted beneath his feet. A wave of energy surged through the arena, and the floor transformed into a glowing maze of light and shadow. Alien beasts materialized from the air, massive, clawed, and glowing with strange energy. "Ah, great," Eli muttered, tightening his grip on the staff. "Space lions, my favorite." The first creature lunged, roaring like thunder. Eli ducked under a swing of its paw and jabbed with his staff. The weapon sparked, throwing the beast back with a flash of light. The crowd gasped. No one expected the human to last 10 seconds. Eli stumbled, rolled, and somehow, through a mix of luck, instinct, and pure stubbornness, stayed on his feet. The staff vibrated, almost guiding him. Each time he swung, light erupted from its tip, forming a shield or blast of energy that surprised even him. "Okay," he panted, dodging another beast. "I have no idea how this thing works, but I'm loving it." From her throne above, Empress Zyra watched intently. Her expression was calm, but inside something strange stirred. She had expected arrogance or fear or begging. Instead, the human fought with humor, kindness, heart. When one of the smaller creatures was hurt, he actually paused mid-fight to help it limp away. "You're not supposed to comfort the trial beasts," one of the nobles hissed. "He's helping it," another exclaimed in disbelief. Zyra said nothing, but her heart skipped once, just once. When the final beast faded into light, the arena floor shifted again. The voice of the Empress filled the air. "You have survived the first trial, but there are 2 more." Eli groaned. "Of course there are." The second trial was silence. A blinding light surrounded him, and suddenly he stood alone in a vast, mirrored space. His reflection stared back at him. Only this time it spoke. "You don't belong here," it said. "You're just a human, a tiny creature pretending to matter." Eli swallowed. The words hit hard. He'd heard them before from officers, diplomats, even himself. But he looked at his reflection and smiled faintly. "Yeah, maybe. But maybe mattering isn't about what you are. Maybe it's about what you do." The reflection flickered, then vanished. When he returned to the arena, he was shaking, but still smiling. Zyra's voice came again, softer this time. "The final trial truth." A beam of light engulfed him, and suddenly she stood before him. Not the Empress, but Zyra. Without her crown, her power dimmed. "Why do you want me human?" she asked quietly. He blinked. "Wait, is this part of the test, or are you actually?" "Answer." Eli hesitated. He could have said something clever, something charming, but for once he didn't. He stepped closer, meeting her gaze. "Because you looked lonely, and I know what that feels like." Her breath caught. "Lonely," she whispered. He nodded. "You've got power, soldiers, planets, but no one who talks to you, not the Empress, just you." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the light faded and the crowd erupted into thunderous sound. Eli blinked, finding himself alone again. The arena was whole, the beasts gone, and above him the Empress stood. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes shimmered with something warm. "You have passed," she said softly. "No human has ever done so." Eli smiled weakly. "Do I get a trophy? Maybe a sandwich?" This time she actually laughed. The sound was like music, gentle and bright, echoing through the entire hall. The nobles stared in disbelief. No one had ever heard their Empress laugh. Zyra stood, her voice carrying across the arena. "Captain Eli Rivers, foolish, reckless human, you surprise me." Eli bowed dramatically. "It's a gift." Her gaze lingered. "Perhaps it is." And as he left the arena, bruised, aching, and covered in dust, Eli swore he saw her watching him with a look that wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was something deeper. Something dangerous. Something like hope. The palace was quiet that night. The kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. Captain Eli Rivers sat alone in the garden of the upper terrace, the night sky glowing with 3 silver moons. Strange flowers pulsed with soft light around him, filling the air with a sweet, electric scent. He leaned back against a smooth crystal wall, staring up at the stars, trying to ignore the dull ache in his ribs. He had survived the trials of heart. Somehow, against monsters, illusions, and cosmic trickery, he was still breathing. The crowd had cheered, the nobles had whispered, and the Empress, well, she had smiled. That had been worth every bruise. He chuckled softly to himself. Passed the test of a galactic Empress. Not bad for a guy who once failed basic flight school. A voice floated from behind him, calm and cool. "You speak to yourself often, Captain Rivers." Eli turned and nearly choked on his drink. Empress Zyra stood there, not in her glowing crown or royal armor, but in a simple silver gown that shimmered softly in the moonlight. Her hair was unbound, falling over her shoulders like molten gold. Without all the ceremony, she looked human. Almost. He blinked, then grinned. "If I say I was talking about how amazing my day was, will you believe me?" Her lips curved faintly. "That depends. Was it truly amazing?" He shrugged. "Well, I didn't die. Gotta see you laugh. That's a win in my book." She walked closer, her bare feet silent on the glowing stones. "You find humor even in fear." "It helps," he said softly. "If you can laugh, you can breathe. If you can breathe, you can keep going." She stopped beside him, looking up at the moons. For a while, neither spoke. The soft hum of the alien garden filled the silence. Then she said quietly, "No one has ever completed the trials as you did." He tilted his head. "Really? I thought it was beginner level." Her eyes glimmered and she gave the smallest laugh. "You jest, but few survive the first. The second breaks minds. The third breaks hearts." Eli watched her profile in the moonlight. There was strength there, yes, but also sadness. "You sounded almost lonely when you said that," he murmured. She turned to him sharply. "An empress does not feel loneliness." He smiled softly. "Everyone feels it, Zyra, even gods, I think." Her eyes widened slightly at the sound of her name on his tongue. No title, no majesty, just her. "Do you always speak so freely to rulers?" she asked, her tone not angry but curious. "Only the ones who deserve to hear the truth," he said with a shrug. For a long moment she just stared at him. Then she looked away, her voice quieter. "Truth is not often kind." He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "Maybe, but kindness isn't always about saying what's easy." She studied him again, her expression softer now. "You are not like the others of your kind I have met." "That's probably true," he said with a grin. "Most humans don't get invited to royal trials." "Most humans do not make me laugh," she said simply. That made him pause. The honesty in her voice was gentle and startling. He smiled, a little shy now. "Then I'm honored, Your Majesty." She rolled her eyes slightly, amused. "Do not call me that when we are alone. It feels distant." He chuckled. "All right then, Zyra." He tried the name again, quietly this time. "It's beautiful, you know." Her gaze softened. "On your tongue it sounds different." The air between them shifted, closer, warmer. For a moment neither spoke. The stars seemed to hum louder. Zyra broke the silence first. "Why did you really fight for my world, Eli? There was no gain for you, no promise of reward." He looked up at the moons, his expression serious now. "Because it was the right thing to do, and because I couldn't just watch people die when I could help." Her golden eyes glowed faintly. "That is rare among the powerful." "Guess that's why I'm not powerful," he said with a grin. "Just stubborn." She smiled, a small, true smile that reached her eyes. "Perhaps that is a kind of power." He turned toward her. "Maybe, but I think you have the harder job." She raised an eyebrow. "Being empress." "Being human enough to care," he said softly. That silenced her. The word struck something deep, something she didn't like to admit existed. "I have ruled for centuries," she whispered. "I have known love, betrayal, victory, loss, but never this." This, he asked gently. She hesitated, searching for words. This curiosity, this warmth, this distraction. Eli smiled, leaning back. Distraction, huh? I'll take it. Better than being vaporized. That earned another laugh, soft, surprised, real. The sound made something inside him ache in the best way. They sat there together under the moons, silence stretching comfortably between them. Finally, she said, "You are dangerous, human." He blinked. "Me? I'm barely dangerous with a fork." Her eyes glowed faintly as she leaned closer. "You make me feel that is far more dangerous than any weapon." Eli's heart skipped. For a second he forgot to breathe. Then gently he said, "Guess that makes us both in trouble." Zyra looked at him, truly looked at him, and for a moment the Empress of 12 Galaxies didn't see a soldier or a human or a subject. She saw a man who wasn't afraid to see her. The night wind stirred her hair. She stood, the moment hanging between them like a heartbeat. "Good night, Eli," she said softly. He smiled up at her. "Good night, Zyra." As she turned to leave, her fingers brushed his shoulder, so light he almost thought he imagined it. But when she was gone, he could still feel the warmth of her touch. And as the moons watched silently from above, both the Empress and the human lay awake that night, each wondering, against all reason, if destiny had just taken its first breath between them. The days after the trials were strange ones in the Zerathian palace. Everywhere Captain Eli Rivers went, eyes followed him. Servants whispered behind walls of crystal, nobles exchanged cold smiles, and the palace guards never seemed to blink. To most of them, he was still the reckless human who had dared to speak the unthinkable. But to the Empress, Zyra, things had changed. Every morning she sent for him, sometimes to discuss intergalactic affairs, though their talks often drifted into stories and laughter. Sometimes they simply walked through the hanging gardens while she asked questions about Earth, its oceans, its music, its sunsets. For the first time the Empress smiled often, too often some said. And so the rumors began. One morning, Eli arrived in the royal courtyard to find the atmosphere tense. The sky shimmered dark violet, heavy with storm clouds. He sensed something wrong the moment he saw Zyra's expression. Her golden eyes were cold again, like the day he first met her. "You wish to see me?" he asked carefully. She turned sharply, her silver robe swirling. "Is it true?" He blinked. Depends. I usually need a little more context before I confess to things." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "Do not mock me, human. The council has spoken of what you said, that you laugh behind my back, that you boast of winning the Empress." Eli's stomach dropped. "Wait, what? That's not true." But she wasn't listening. Her power flared faintly, making the marble floor hum beneath his boots. "I opened my court to you. I gave you honor no outsider has ever known, and you repay me with mockery." He stepped closer. "Zyra, I swear I never said anything like that. Someone's twisting." "Enough," she snapped. "You humans think your words are harmless, your smiles innocent. But in this palace, words shape worlds." Her voice shook, not with anger alone, but with hurt. That was what stung him most. Eli took a slow breath. "You really think I'd make fun of you, after after what we've shared?" Her eyes flickered, softening for half a heartbeat, then hardening again. "I think I've made a mistake. You should leave before I correct it." The words hit harder than a plasma blast. He searched her face for some sign that she didn't mean it. But the Empress had already turned away, her shoulders straight, her crown bright with cold light. "You have one day," she said quietly. "Then you will leave Zurath." Eli swallowed the thousand things he wanted to say. "If that's what you want, I'll go." She didn't answer. He bowed once, too formal, too distant, and walked away. That night the palace seemed emptier than usual. Rain fell against the glowing windows, each drop whispering like a tiny heartbeat. Eli packed what little he owned: a jacket, a photo of Earth, a tiny music device he couldn't get to work on alien power. As he zipped his bag, he laughed bitterly. Guess humans really are good at messing things up. But beneath the humor, his chest ached. It wasn't just leaving the palace, it was leaving her. Outside, lightning flashed. From her high balcony, Zyra watched the storm too. Her attendants had left her alone hours ago. She stood still, arms folded, her reflection trembling in the window. The whispers of the court played in her mind. The human mocks you. He brags of your favor. He cannot be trusted. And yet, in her heart, she saw his face when he helped the wounded creature during the trials. She remembered his clumsy jokes, his kind eyes, the way he'd said her name like it was a secret meant only for him. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering, "Why does it hurt to doubt him?" The next morning, Eli walked through the grand gates of the palace, bag slung over his shoulder. The guards avoided his gaze. He tried to keep his chin up, though his heart felt heavier with every step. He reached the air docks, where a transport ship waited to take him off-world. "Captain Rivers," a familiar voice shouted. He turned. It was Loran, the Empress's advisor, a sharp-tongued, four-eyed creature who looked perpetually annoyed. "You're leaving?" Loran asked, frowning. Eli shrugged. "Seems like it." Loran's eyes flicked nervously. "Good, because the rebellion leaders will strike today. They think removing the Empress will end the Empire's unity. If you're smart, you'll be far away when it happens." Eli froze. "Rebellion." Loran nodded grimly. "The Council hid it from her, but I thought you should know." Eli's thoughts raced. Zyra, alone, hurt, still believing lies about him, was in danger. He dropped his bag instantly. "Guess I'm not that smart." Before Loran could stop him, he was sprinting back toward the palace. Back inside, alarms began to sound, low and trembling like thunder. The sky above the city turned red as ships appeared in orbit. Zyra stood at her throne, eyes blazing, calling her guards to arms. And through the chaos, she saw a figure rushing into the hall, soaked, breathless, and smiling that same reckless smile. "You again," she said, half shocked, half furious. "I ordered you to leave." Eli grinned, drawing a small blaster. "Yeah, about that. Figured I'd stay for one more adventure." "Why?" she demanded. He looked at her, and even with explosions echoing in the distance, his voice was steady. "Because you may not believe me, but I meant what I said. I choose you every time." For a moment her heart betrayed her, it leapt. Then, without another word, she raised her hand and summoned her power. Golden light filled the hall as the Empress and the humans stood side by side, ready to face the storm. The misunderstanding would have to wait. Right now, the galaxy was about to burn, and neither of them planned to run. The palace trembled under the roar of distant explosions. Crimson lights flashed across the marble halls, and alarms sang through the night like broken sirens. Captain Eli Rivers ducked behind a pillar as a blast shook the corridor. Shards of crystal rained down around him, sparkling in the chaos. He coughed, clutching his blaster, and muttered, "Well, this isn't how I pictured date night." Above the palace, the sky was a storm of fire. Rebel ships rained plasma across the capital. The once peaceful towers of the Vaeloran Empire burned like candles in a furious wind. And at the heart of it all stood Empress Zyra. Her golden eyes glowed brighter than the flames outside, her power flaring in great waves of light that shielded her people. But even she couldn't fight an army alone. When Eli burst into the throne room, she spun around in shock. "You again," she said, her voice sharp with disbelief. "I told you to leave." He grinned despite the smoke and fire around them. "Yeah, I didn't listen. You really should get used to that." "You'll die if you stay," she warned. "Maybe," he said, raising his blaster, "but I'd rather die next to you than live wondering if I could have helped." Her heart faltered. For a second, the sounds of battle seemed to fade. He wasn't supposed to say things like that. Humans weren't supposed to mean them. But he did. She could see it in his eyes. "You're a fool," she whispered. "Yeah," he said softly, "but I'm your fool." Before she could answer, the great doors exploded inward. Rebel warriors stormed the hall, their armor black and red, their weapons humming with power. Eli fired first. A shot of blue energy streaked across the room, knocking one of the rebels down. Zyra raised her hands, her power igniting like a second sun. Together, they fought side by side, human speed and alien fury. Eli ducked behind columns, cracked jokes between shots, and somehow, impossibly, made the Empress laugh even in the middle of battle. "You laugh in war," she said, deflecting a plasma bolt with a wave of light. "Keeps the aim steady," he yelled back. The rebels were strong, but they hadn't expected the Empress to fight with a human, and certainly not one who fought with heart instead of fear. But the fight dragged on, and even the strongest hearts get tired. Zyra faltered, her energy flickering as the attackers closed in. A plasma grenade rolled near her feet, humming ominously. Eli didn't think. He moved. He sprinted, tackled her out of the blast zone, and the grenade detonated behind them. The explosion threw them both across the marble floor. Eli groaned, his shoulder burning, his ears ringing. Zyra gasped, half sitting up. "You idiot, you could have died." He grinned through the pain. "Yeah, but you didn't, so I call that a win." Something inside her broke. She pressed her glowing hands to his chest, her energy weaving around his wounds. "Don't speak," she whispered. "Hard not to," he breathed. "You're kind of glowing in my face." Despite the chaos, she laughed softly, a shaky, fragile sound. "You risked everything for me." He reached up, brushing her cheek. "Told you before, I choose you, always." Her hand trembled on his skin. "Even if it kills you. Especially if it means you live." The words hit her like lightning. No one had ever said that to her, not without wanting something in return. For centuries, she had ruled through strength and fear. But this human fought with something else, something she'd almost forgotten existed. Love. The rebels regrouped at the doorway, raising their weapons. Zyra's eyes blazed gold. She rose slowly, lifting her hands toward the ceiling. The entire palace pulsed once, as if the world itself held its breath. "You will not take my home," she said, her voice echoing like thunder. Her power erupted, sweeping through the hall like a tidal wave of light. The rebels screamed as the golden energy lifted them, dissolved their weapons, and cast them out into the stormy sky. Then silence. Eli blinked, looking up from the floor. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." She turned to him, breathing hard, her eyes dimming to a soft glow. "You already are on my bad side." "Then I'm in good company," he said, smiling. For a moment, neither spoke. Smoke curled between the shattered pillars, and the faint hum of energy hung in the air. She knelt beside him again, her hand lingering on his arm. "You are reckless, foolish, and impossible," she said quietly. "You forgot charming," he whispered. Her lips twitched, "and charming." They both laughed, tired, breathless laughter, the kind that comes after surviving the impossible. Finally she said, "You saved me twice." He shrugged weakly. "You can thank me over dinner, preferably somewhere without explosions." Her smile faded, replaced by something softer, deeper. She touched his cheek again. "Why do you do this, human? Why do you care so much?" He met her eyes. "Because someone has to remind the galaxy that even the strongest people need someone to stand beside them." For once, the Empress of 12 Galaxies had no answer. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then stand beside me, Eli Rivers." He smiled, eyes half closed. "That's all I ever wanted." Outside, the storm was fading. The fires dimmed, the sky clearing to soft streaks of dawn. They stood together among the ruins of the throne room, the Empress and the human who wouldn't leave her side. And as the first light of morning touched her golden eyes, Zyra realized something terrifying and beautiful all at once. She was no longer alone.